So I guess you are already curious about finding out about the flirting style of your own type. So here we go. We will start with types 3, 7 and 8. For these type, the energetic qualities of the instinct and of the type are very compatible and they actually mutually reinforce each other. So this means that in these types, the differences between the subtypes are actually not too strong. And it's also the types that actually take the most active role. Now let's start with type 3. The flirting strategy of type 3 is by trying to be the most attractive, being the most popular, the most competent, and they want to create some kind of image of being the best possible partner. Now, 3s want to come across as being very self-confident because that's a very attractive quality. And at the end of the day, flirting is really about trying to win the attention of the other person. Now, interestingly, 3s actually hope to somehow be seen as some kind of trophy, because a trophy is actually the best and they just want to be seen as the best possible partner. And of course, the environment in which they live and where they meet a person is going to determine what exactly is this best possible partner. For some, this may mean that they will try to have some kind of flawless appearance and they'll have all the accessories that are going to draw the attention, attractiveness, fitness, taste, and it's about expertise and success. But maybe for other people, it may be who they know. So for example, if we're looking at the social trees, they may want to try to impress more by having the right connections. Now, 3s also care very much about their masculinity or femininity. So they're quite often going to enhance these masculine or feminine traits by the way that they're clothing or by using makeup or anything like that. So it's very much about shape-shifting, and if you remember the main characteristics of type 3, then the word shape-shifting comes up very often. So of course this happens also very much in flirting. And for example, a female 3, if she knows that the partner that she's interested in is very attracted to feminine looking women, then she may try to dress something that's flowy and silky, maybe some kind of flowery clothing. She's going to do her hair and makeup in a very feminine way, really in order to underline this feminine characteristics. But if she knows that the person she's interested in is more interested in more classic women or more athletic women, she may just decide to put a ponytail, wear some kind of tennis shoes, wear some kind of active wear. Now, it's very important to understand that the shape-shifting is not considered as pretending by type 3. For them, they consider it just something like highlighting a different part of the whole. For them, shape-shifting is not something dishonest. They believe that all these parts, the feminine part, maybe more active, and the classical part, they consider these are all parts of themselves, but they're just underlining the characteristics of one part of the self. So they consider it more as like putting the best foot forward, and the best foot is going to depend on the situation. Now, 3s want to win their partner, so they may be quite cautious who they go after. 3s may come across as being very self-confident, but that's not always the case. So basically, when they're flirting with somebody, most likely they're only going to do that with somebody that they know is interested in them. They're not going to flirt with somebody who may be too hard to win. Now, this means that quite often the 3 may want the other person to show some sign of interest before they're going to start flirting with them. They want to see that there is definitely going to be some kind of mutuality or reciprocities. And there's even some 3s who don't like to make the first move. They may give some kind of indication to the other person that they wouldn't mind being flirted with, but they don't want to take the first step because they don't want to be put in some kind of awkward position in case it would not be reciprocal. But when they see that the other person is really interested in them, then the 3 is going to take a very active role, and they become very much like a pursuer. If the other person actually does not react positively, then the 3 may just drop all the attempts, and they may even look down at the person that they were initially interested in. 3s want to be successful in everything they do, so that also applies to flirting or even seducing. They don't want to make a fool out of themselves. They don't want that somebody is going to be able to tell them, this person was trying to flirt but it didn't work out. That would really touch their ego too much. So 3s also tend to like partners who are slightly less popular than themselves, because that is going to reduce the likelihood of being rejected. And the other part of it is that when they're then in a social setting, they don't need to compete with each other for getting the attention, for getting the affection from the people around them. In general, 3s are quite attracted to people that they find intelligent, talented, or competent. And they may even like it when the partner is slightly insecure, because that would mean that they create some kind of perfect match, because then the 3 can actually support them in getting this sense of self-confidence. It's important to understand that 3s are not light-minded when they are trying to meet somebody. For them, when they have the ambition of finding a partner to spend the rest of their life with, then they're really going to do their best. So they can be often quite rational in making their mind about who they want to be with and who not. And it may sound a little bit unromantic, this making up their mind in a rational way, but it's actually not a bad strategy, because at the end of the day, if you want to spend the rest of your days with one person, you better have some sense of pragmatism and not purely emotionally. Of course, there's an exception, and that is the sexual 3, which tends to be quite irrational and may not have this kind of pragmatic approach to dating. Another important aspect of this flirting and dating is how 3s will try to be very attentive to the possible partner, and they're trying to connect on a regular basis. So they may just send a link of a video or an article they saw or read. They may send some little gifts. They may just send a message to let the other one know that they are missing him or her. So basically, they're very good in keeping this connection and really make sure that the other person knows that they're actually thinking of them. And what is very interesting is that 3s may actually drop this figurative mask that they're putting on with a person that they really trust. They may really feel as if they don't need to put it on and that they can really be who they want to be. But of course, this is very much for 3s that are looking for a long-term partnership. If they're just looking for somebody who they just want to have sexual pleasure with, then they're going to use this shape-shifting extremely much, and then they're really going to try to be irresistible. They're really going to try to match the interests and the expectations of their object of desire. So they can really be showing off and really try to impress. And 3s are actually brilliant salespeople, and in this case, what they're selling is themselves, and they can be very good at that. And this whole flirting becomes some kind of true art that they can really master very well. So when they are trying to show the best of themselves, they're really trying to create a great narrative about themselves. They're trying to brag about all their achievements, what they've done, who they know. They bring in their charisma, and of course the social skills that are generally pretty strong for 3s come in very handy here. Men can actually also use something else. They may really try to impress the possible partner through expensive gifts, dinners, amazing flower bouquets, and they may really try to sweep the other person off their feet. But of course, they may sometimes go a little bit over the top here. The unhealthy trees, especially if they have a low self-esteem or if they are with a partner who they feel is not flattering them enough, these trees may actually use flirting not necessarily as a tool for finding a partner, but more as a tool for finding admiration and affirmation of their self-worth. So they may use seduction as a tool for gaining power, or even to try to get somebody in bed in a very narcissistic way, because it gives them some kind of emotional reward that they were able to get that person in bed. It's not about the emotional connection or the emotional attachment to a person. So also something else with less healthy trees is that they may see the partner as some kind of trophy, because if they can get a very attractive person in bed, that means that they must be very good themselves, and this is really going to enhance their sense of self-esteem and self-worth. Finally, trees are actually pretty good natural flirts. It comes somehow automatically, because in flirting you really try to be attractive, and this is what trees are actually doing in every day of their life. They really try to be liked. They want to be perceived in a very good way. So this whole shape-shifting is something that comes very naturally. Trying to appeal to the others is something that they are very used to do. But it also means that as they're so good at being liked, sometimes their behavior can be misperceived as flirting, whereas they're just trying to be appreciated, to get some kind of affirmation. Now, to end this part on type 3, let's look at a little bit the differentiations between the subtypes. Now, logically, this sexual tree is going to be the most intense, the most impulsive, the most straightforward in using this seduction and charisma. And they may be very, very good at attracting a partner, but keeping the partner for a longer term may be more difficult for them. The self-preservation tree may be a little bit more cool and maybe downplaying. And what we also see with self-preservation trees quite often is that, and especially if they are in the less healthy ranges, is that they may have unrealistic schedules, and they may be such workaholics that they don't really have time to connect with other people, and that may create some kind of challenges in the way they are trying to meet people and dating them. And finally, also the social tree may be a little bit cooler than the sexual tree, but they will be more prone to try to impress the other person through their social connections. And they may also want to look at how the relationship with a possible partner is going to elevate their own status and social connections. The next type is type 7, and flirting comes very easily to them, because flirting is about playing with sexual energy, and 7s are very good at playing. So sometimes it's very difficult to distinguish if 7s are just engaging in some kind of unconfined flirting, or if they're just being playful. Because 7s really want to share their joy and positive vibes, and they want others to feel happy and good and joyful. So they see flirting as a gift that they bring to the world. They see it as a way of telling people that they are seen as beautiful beings. And especially the sexual 7s flirt in order to lift energy, to practice using their senses, to be kind, and really to spread love, basically. Now, all of this has a very attractive quality, right? Because many people want to be around them. 7s like to share jokes, winks, smiles, and silly moments. But it doesn't mean that somebody's flirting with you if they're just playing a little bit with you. Because well, sevens, they just like this excitement of playing. They like having happy moments together with others, and they may really like to dance close with somebody in a very sensual way, or they may play a little bit with sexual energy, or they may touch somebody's arm. But it doesn't mean that they are really flirting, and this is why many sevens very often have lots of stories about how they were mistaken for being flirting. So for example, they may have stories about how a colleague or maybe a cashier in a shop was thinking that they wanted to flirt with them. And of course this can bring them in tricky situations, especially if it's on the workplace. Now, quite often, sevens don't know themselves if they are just playful or actually flirting. And sometimes they don't even want to think about it, because thinking, is this a person that I want to pursue for a relationship? I mean, even this thought can be a little bit too serious, and they want to avoid having to think about that too much. Of course, on the other side, this also means that they keep the other person guessing, and also that can be very unpleasant for the other person and lead to some kind of unpleasant situations. What's also very interesting is that it's very difficult to see if a seven is flirting or playing, but very often sevens themselves have a hard time understanding if somebody is actually flirting with them or also just being playful. Now, quite often sevens will admit that they're just playful without having any sexual intentions. They just like the playfulness, as I already said. And for these sevens, the nicest flirting is actually when both are aware that it's just a game. When both are aware that there is not going to be any sex at the end. When both are just playing the game. So sevens can be very comfortable with some kind of platonic flirting. And this is why sevens can actually sometimes say that they really like flirting with people they're not attracted to. Because then they know in advance that nothing's going to happen and they're not going to end up in any unpleasant situations. Because in these cases, sevens can really let go, they can be spontaneous, they can be fun and wild. And the real fun is really when there is no expectations, when there are no strings attached. But of course, the moment that things start getting too serious, sevens may disappear in a minute because they don't want to take the flirting to the next level. Of course, this doesn't mean that sevens are never flirting for real. I mean, they often do, and when they do, they're very good at it because it comes very naturally. And they actually flirt through positivity and promises. So they're very optimistic, warm, fun, and they can promise the world. And when they make these promises, it is not that they are like intentionally lying or anything like that. No, when they do, they're really feeling what they are promising. They really feel the energy of the other. They really want to connect on a very deep level. But sometimes the attractions come and go very easily. And sevens also don't really want, they have some difficulties really discerning what they're really attracted to or not. Because they can be attracted to somebody, but then they also don't want to be limited too much in their choices. And sometimes it seems as if sevens are always on the lookout for the next. So it often seems that being playful is the only flirting strategy that the sevens truly master. I mean, they never really, or hardly ever, I would say, really are able to connect on the level of deep emotions. So they're not like fours. And it's also very innocent in the way they're flirting, so it's very difficult from, let's say, the targeted seductions of twos or eights. Now, another interesting thing about this playfulness and so on is when sevens are flirting with purely sexual intentions, they can have lots of vivid fantasies and they can really have a dirty mind as they are flirting with the person. So I've heard a couple of stories of female sevens, for example, who were telling that they were flirting with somebody and in their head they were already undressing the guy and performing fellatio on him. Now, you see on their faces that something's happening there in their mind, but it's difficult to understand what is really happening in their head. Of course, I'm talking very much about 7s in our industrialized society with rather liberal sexual values. So 7s in a conservative society or more restrictive sexual norms and values are going to use this playfulness in a different way. And the other interesting thing is when 7s are truly interested in a long-term partnership, then the flirting becomes a completely different game. At a young age, 7s always want to have fun and they don't have a fear of their rejection and they just go for it. But as they grow older, also their anxiety can grow. Basically, when they get into their late teenage years or they become real adults, and they may have an interest in somebody for a long-term relationship, they can fear that the interest is not going to be mutual, that it's not going to be reciprocal. And in such cases, they become shy and nervous because they don't want to come across as creepy, pervy, clingy, or awkward, or anything like that. So in those cases, their oneness can come up. And interestingly and surprisingly, in those cases, 7s start flirting sometimes in a little bit an awkward manner. Now, there's a small side remark that I want to make here, and this is a misconception about 7s, because some people think that 7s are not interested in long-term relationships, that they are afraid of commitment. And this is not true. 7s are happy to be in a committed relationship as anybody else, but they're just afraid of getting stuck and not being able to get out of a relationship they don't like anymore. And they also don't want to feel suffocated. So for example, well, nobody likes being with a jealous partner, but for the 7 it's particularly difficult. So also among type 7, there are lots of differentiations among the subtypes, albeit maybe not as strong as with others. So let's start with the self-preservation 7. They really want to have fun, they want to have a good time, but they're not seeking to be at the center of the attention. They don't like to have all eyes on them. And their sense of spontaneity is more linked with whatever is just happening around them. And it's a little bit different for the sexual 7. For them, it's more about the spontaneity of emotions. They have lots of idealizations, and they really don't like when the sexual energy is somehow limited. They really want to enjoy it to the fullest, and they want to express to the fullest how they enjoy it. Because for them, sexual energy is something that really feels so good. And then finally, the social 7 is a little bit different, because they often want to be the king or the queen of the party. I mean, they're attracting the attention physically by dancing, emotionally through fun and happiness, and mentally through jokes and puns. So the last one in this video is type 8. Now for 8s, flirting and seducing is all about feeling alive, about the life force, about life energy. When they are flirting with somebody and the other one flirts back, they really feel this primal energy. They feel energized and alive. And this means that quite often 8s may not only flirt in order to find a partner, but just to have this sensation of feeling alive. And it's a little bit like a male sexual 8 once said. I mean, when you see a gorgeous woman and you're really attracted to her, why contain that energy? Why wouldn't you tell this woman that you're attracted to her? I mean, why should that woman go around in life without hearing how attractive she is? Now, of course, there can be a very thin line between just this flirting to feel alive and really flirting to find a partner. Because there may be situations where the 8 may flirt in order to feel alive, but when this flirting is reciprocated, it may be very hard to contain this energy, and things may take a further step. Now, there is a very important remark that we need to make about this alleged playfulness of type 8. I mean, 8s may think they are playing, but most often they're not really respecting the boundaries of other people. They're invading their space with their big energy. So it's not about being playful with sexual energy or anything like that. Because the other thing is that flirting is really about the interaction between two people. And many 8s just tend to completely overpower or overwhelm the other person without interacting on an emotional level, or without understanding the subtleties of the other person. So quite often 8s just come over too strong, and they have an attitude of like, I want it, I take it. Flirting is really about building a connection, and 8s are often not so good in building connections. They often don't give the other person enough space, and they often don't get the signals if somebody is not interested or if the other person feels somehow intimidated. Of course, social 8s are a little bit different because they tend to have better social skills, and they're not as overpowering or invading as other 8s. So actually 8s are not really flirting. They're not really playing with sexual energy. And especially the ones that are sexual blind, they often don't get the subtlety of fun and wit, intellect, charm, and so on. So 8s are not really flirting. We should rather talk about seducing, because 8s really know what they want and they're going to get it. I mean, they have a very clear aim, which is normal in the case of seducing. 8s don't like an uncertain outcome, because in flirting you actually don't know what's going to happen. In seducing, you know what you want and you're going to get it. So basically we could say that 8s tend to be pretty bad at flirting, but they seem to be very good at seducing. So 8s can be very direct, blunt, explicit, and they leave no doubt whatsoever that they have an interest in the other person. 8s also tend to take the first move, but they also tend to come in like a freight train. I mean, they just go for it. There is nothing subtle about it. It's very assertive, very action-oriented, very goal-oriented, and they tend to go too fast quite often. 8s also tend to say things straight in the other person's face, even if it is inappropriate. I mean, for example, an 8 may just say like, I think you've got a great body and I would like to have sex with you. Now, if that's a man, it can really bring him into trouble, especially with the Me Too movement. But when a woman does this, she can sometimes be lucky, and there's quite some sexual 8 women who have stories about a very active sex life thanks to this directness. And of course, this doesn't mean that all 8s are like that, and the sexual 8 may be the most extreme in this case. But it is something that does not happen that infrequently, I'd say. And also this directness is actually a sign of a seduction strategy and not of a flirting strategy. Because a female 8 said it once that the aim actually of this directness is to disarm the other. It's just getting power by shocking the other, by undercutting their sense of confidence. And another thing, in order to show that it's really about seduction, is this lustfulness of type 8. I mean, when type 8 wants something, they just take it. If they're hungry, they're going to eat. If they're thirsty, they're going to drink. And if they want to have sex, they're just going to go for it. 8s are not only verbally assertive, but they can also be physically assertive. They can use sensual touch. They can have eye contact. They may just touch the leg or arm of a person and do it in a more sexual than rather sensual way. They can also move physically into the space of another person, and really this touchiness is something that's very common, and that can actually get them into problems sometimes. But they can actually use also this touch as a way of testing the other. When they touch somebody, they just may want to see the reaction. What is this person going to do? Now, this directness, well, some people love it, some people hate it. I mean, some people find this directness somehow refreshing, captivating, intriguing, and magnetic, and others may just say that, sorry, this is inappropriate, shocking, and intimidating. But 8s themselves, they think there is nothing wrong with this approach because they say, look, I'm honest. But is it really honest? Because they do so in a rather brutal way, you could say. They do it in a way without caring too much about the other person. So again, here it's also showing that it's not about flirting, because in flirting you beat around the bush, and that's something that 8s don't do. Also, quite often, 8s are actually not really honest. I mean, making a blunt remark or saying something provocative doesn't mean that you actually mean it. And quite often, 8s make some kind of statement or express their interest in having sex with somebody without actually expecting that the other one is going to say yes. Because if the other one would say yes, they may actually get confused and they wouldn't know what to do with it. 8s are not only direct, but they also want to control, and they do so in a very self-convinced manner. And this is why they also sometimes tend to objectify their partner. And this is something we can really see with unhealthy 8s, because unhealthy 8s can act as real predators, and they are actually proud of it. Fortunately, not all 8s are like that. But still, they want to have control. So when they like somebody, they will ask this person out. They're going to take the lead. They're going to be in charge, and they want to be the pursuer. Some 8s actually do not want to be pursued by the other, because it gives them somehow some kind of feeling that they're no longer in control. Other 8s actually don't mind if somebody else is taking the initiative, if somebody else is pursuing them, because for them it can be some kind of competition. They may want to outdo the pursuer, and when the other one is trying to initiate some kind of seduction game, they may just say game on, and they'll go for it. And there's actually also some other 8s, albeit less frequently, that actually want to be seduced. Some 8s actually don't want to be in the lead all the time, and they may feel that finally they can relax somehow. Another thing is that 8s are also very certain of themselves. Flirting is about testing the water, and this is not what 8s do. I mean, 8s just know that they will get the person, they are convinced, and they just assume that the other person is also interested in them. So this is why they can be very direct, right? I mean, they say, I know you want me, we both know that we're going to have sex, so why waste time? So, and in general, they quite often get what they want, so they don't really need this kind of subtle flirting skills. And quite often they may find flirting to be something stupid and dishonest. They can say that it's some kind of waste of time. Like, why pretend if you already know what's going to happen? I mean, if you know that you're going to have sex, why have this kind of play? Just be very upfront about it. But of course, sometimes they're completely wrong. They're not always successful, and quite often by being so direct they may scare the other person away. And sometimes they just don't get it, and if the other person runs away from them, the 8 is just going to act as if nothing happened, if they were not flirting and the other person was just not properly understanding them. Now, of course, everything that I'm saying is very much about the flirting in our industrialized Western society. And I also know that in more restricted or sex-negative cultures or more conservative environments, flirting is going to happen in a completely different way, and they may definitely not be as direct in trying to meet another person. So who are 8s attracted to? Well, first of all, type 8 is a gut type, so it's all about body energy. They can read the energy of the people around them very quickly, and they just sense immediately if somebody is a good match. They don't think about it, they just know it. And they actually want to find a partner who who matches their energy, somebody who's not afraid or intimidated by them. And they want a person who actually values or is fascinated by their independence, and who doesn't consider them to be too much. I mean, they also don't like when another person is going to be too easy. 8s actually like the chase. They like the adrenaline and the force and the power that is needed in order to be successful in this seduction game. In general, 8s do not like people who show off, but they may quite often be attracted to people who are in a position of power, or some are attracted to people who have some kind of dangerous or unattainable aspect to them. They also like when the other person is equally direct to them, because they don't want to enter into this kind of emotional games of understanding what is not directly said. I mean, they don't want to waste their time trying to analyze things. They don't want to have to waste their time on all kinds of subtleties of reading into the minds of other people. So maybe to conclude on type 8, we can look at some differentiations among the subtypes. Now, the sexual 8 is without any doubt the most intense and the most direct of all. They really want to feel alive. It's all about having this sexual energy pumping through them, and this whole seduction or flirting gives them a sense of power. The self-preservation 8 is very often a little bit more cautious and more reserved, and they may need to have some kind of safety before they're going to engage, before they're going to take a first step. Sometimes for the self-preservation 8, especially if they're sexual blind, flirting may not come very naturally, and they may not really pick up clues if somebody's flirting with them. And they may not, well, sometimes they may just think that it's some kind of compliment that somebody's giving to them. And finally, the social 8 is more prone to seduce or flirt in a more socially acceptable manner. And they also have they're more able to connect with a person at a more deeper level very often, and they're going to be less blunt or direct, and they will also have more respect for the boundaries of the other person.